All right, welcome into Behind the Mic in the SEC. I'm your host, Bree Andrus, and this week we're covering Texas A&M with Travis Brown from the Eagle in College Station, Texas. How are you today, Travis?
Hey, can't complain. It's a beautiful day out here, so I thought I'd take us outside.
I wish it was beautiful over here. It's been raining and cloudy and gross all day in Baton Rouge.
Oh, I think you got everything that we had last week. So
Yeah, definitely. So let's get started. So, how did you start your career in journalism and in sports reporting?
yeah, it's something that really kind of came on my radar as something I might want to do like my senior year in high school. I wrote for my high school newspaper, which was kind of dinky little. We put something out like three times a year, but I always loved writing. I always played sports, and it just kind of came together in a an aha moment of like, hey, every creative writing assignment I've ever done in school was about something sports related. I could actually do this for a career. And so I searched for schools that had good journalism programs, wound up at TCU, and then just through networks and networking and connecting with people, was able to luckily land a job at ESPN out of school, and I've just kind of progressed through there. So it always just had a tie back in with loving sports and wanting to have a career in sports, and then also really loving the written word and doing that. And then through further study in college with journalism and working for papers and organizations after that, just kind of falling in love with journalism as a whole, and the study, the discovering new things, and kind of progressing through journalism as a whole, while also covering sports as a part of that.
And how long have you been in the business?
This will be I'm wrapping up my 13th season. If you kind of go by college sports seasons. So yeah, this will be my 13th season, I believe.
Awesome. So, what do you enjoy about covering the SEC and Texas A&M specifically?
Well, right now, with how the college athletics landscape is going, the real two power brokers in college athletics right now are the Southeastern Conference and the Big Ten. And so, if you want to be kind of on the forefront of how college athletics is going from a gameplay, from a championships drive, from a business perspective, covering one of those two conferences is where kind of things are starting, and they're on the leading edge of everything going. So it's been great to be a part of covering that conference from that perspective, and Texas A&M from that perspective as well. I'm a guy that, since I write for a legacy media kind of organization with a newspaper, as opposed to kind of more new media, when you look at online publications, or especially in college sports, some of the kind of fan related websites, recruiting related websites. I kind of see it as my responsibility, and a little bit more of my niche right now, to look a little bit more into the business, the administration, and the kind of legal perspectives of what college athletics is going through right now. There's a lot of the saturation in sports journalism right now, and just game stories and what's going on the field and roster depth and things like that. But it's a fascinating time to be covering college sports because of NIL and the transfer portal and the all of the legal challenges that are going into whether the NCAA, whether college athletics violates antitrust legislation on the federal level. And then with NIL, how much that has been kind of uh, passed down the line to states, different individual states, to govern how name, image, and likeness compensation is going to work within their states. And um, a lot of times you're not going to see recruiting websites or fan blogs in certain places doing coverage on how those processes are going through the legal systems at the state legislative level, and how different universities are reacting or coping with those changes. And A&M has been at the forefront and pushing the boundaries on how a lot of this name, image, and likeness stuff is being done. They were one of the first to actually associate a NIL compensation fund with their 501c3 booster club organization, the 12th Man Foundation, which is independent from the university but works in conjunction with the athletic department, and kind of testing the waters on how that's going to work in that NIL space and legally. And so if you're going to cover Texas A&M with how forefront they've been on those NIL initiatives, you have to be researching and looking at some of these legislative things. And so all of that stuff fascinates me. I know that was a very long-winded answer, but I think to cover the SEC, to cover Texas A&M is more than just covering first downs and home runs and three-pointers. It's covering the state legislative process. It's covering the federal legislative process. It's covering tax law. It's covering all of these different kinds of things that are associated around sports, and that fascinates me.
Yeah, definitely. So have you ever covered another conference? And if so, how is the SEC different? Like, what sets it apart from every other conference?
Yeah, so before I was here, I worked at ESPN Dallas for 2 years, mostly did Texas high school football coverage, but helped out with SMU, some FCS games, things like that. And then I spent 4.5 years at the Fort Worth Star Telegram covering TCU in the Big 12, also covering some other adjacent things that happened in the Dallas Fort Worth area. So I've covered Big 12, Southland, Notre Dame, FCS championships, all the above. You have to say that the pomp and circumstance and the fan bases that follow the SEC are massive. I mean, sometimes when you cover other schools and other conferences, there could be games where you're like, yeah, I don't know if this is going to feel like a college football game because, Southeast Northwestern State is coming in this weekend and its fan base can be small as it is. And so maybe it's going to be a little bit dead of a week. But in the SEC, I mean, a dud of a week in the SEC still kind of blows attendance numbers out most other places. The storylines are not just regional, they're national. What happens in the SEC, the simplest thing that can be said in a press conference is going to make national news. Whereas sometimes in other conferences, things that are said after games don't necessarily move the needle the same way that they do in the SEC. A lot of that has to do with the SEC having the SEC network and a national network that covers the stuff that happens in this region. And so it kind of pushes some of the storylines to a more national level. And then just the caliber of athlete that's usually recruited by SEC schools because of the prestige of the conference, the finances of the athletic departments, the facilities that they have. You're going to see a high caliber of athletic event just about every time you go out to a game. And that's great. But that's also not saying that there isn't greatness in other ways in other conferences too. I think that there is sometimes a little bit of an SEC exceptionalist idea that goes out there because they are the programs that make the most money. They have the biggest TV contracts. That changing a little bit with the Big Ten and what they negotiated here. But you kind of had that power two dynamic between the SEC and Big Ten. And that's not to say that what makes college athletics great is that it's this massive regional environment between all of these different schools all across the country. Each one has their own different flavor and flair. And that's why I love college football and college athletics, is because you do get those regional rivalries, that different identities between the different conferences. I just think that if you would be living under a rock if you didn't say that the best athletes, some of the best athletes, some of the most lucrative athletic departments and best facilities reside in the Southeast.
And what would you say is your favorite sport to cover within Texas A&M and why?
That's a hard question because it just, it depends on the season sometimes. I think the thing that I've enjoyed covering at A&M the most over the last 4 years is I actually really enjoy covering Buzz Williams and the men's basketball team. The way that Buzz Williams runs his program, the kind of culture that they have of there is one of openness and individuality and relationship building. And because of that, there's some great stories to tell over there. There's been some great personalities and players to talk to. I think it's fascinating sometimes to hear the way that Buzz Williams looks at the sport, and the openness that he and his program has had with the media that covers him has been refreshing and something I've enjoyed. I feel fulfilled in my job getting to cover that program because of the openness, um, the relatability, and the way that his players talk to us. It just makes for great storytelling. Um, as far as the sports itself, I've played baseball into college. I love baseball. I'm a baseball guy. Uh, I've really enjoyed the new pitch clocks and things that happen in baseball this year to make the games a
Me
little bit
too.
shorter.
Me too.
Yeah, because even as a die-hard baseball guy who has loved and played the sport, A&M team last year was always working full counts, always working pitchers. There was games that went 5 hours regularly last year. That was a grind. So I've enjoyed doing that. I love soccer. I love covering women's soccer over here. It's been fun. And then, I mean, I always seem like football is the last one I mentioned, but I have always liked watching and covering sports other than football, probably more, even though football was high on the list. But traveling around the Southeast to all these different stadiums, getting to see the fan bases, everything that goes into how crazy football season is, it's infectious. You can't deny it. So football is always been great to cover as well. But I'm a storyteller. I like telling stories. I like digging into the nitty gritty. Sometimes that's not as available to do with football season because how many people want to talk to the players, how big and blown up it is. And so sometimes I get to scratch that itch in some of the smaller sports. And if I had to name one, the men's basketball team has been great to be able to kind of get into some of that I really enjoy. So I love doing that.
And what would you say is your ultimate career goal? Like if you could dream up the perfect job that you'd want to do forever, what would that be?
You know, that's an interesting question because I think feel like that changes every 6 months. When I first got out of school, it was I wanted to cover a pro sports team somewhere, maybe the NHL. I'm a big hockey fan too. I got to do a little bit of that, the Star Telegram, and then I'm down here, and now I'm like, I really love things that almost people might consider more of the news side stuff, like I mentioned in one of the earlier questions, and kind of that sports business, state legislature, sports administration that ties into the athletic departments because this might sound a little nihilistic towards sports journalism career, but it does get to a point where you've been to so many games that you kind of feel sometimes you're writing the same game story a second time and a third time, and so it gets a little bit like with especially with, and like I said, NIL transfer portal legal challenges. There's always something new and different in that, and so that's been fun. Where that is, journalism is and sports journalism is changing rapidly. When I started this 13 years ago, newsrooms across the country were twice the size. I know the newsroom at the Eagle here where I work, it was twice the size at that point. There was a lot more positions as struggles have happened with newspapers and really all kinds of media organizations have they tried to figure out the best way to monetize the internet. The roles, the beats, the way positions look, it changed. I cut my teeth in the industry trying to advertise myself as a guy who could do a little bit of everything. I could write, I could shoot and edit video, I could stand in front of a video and do a stand up, I could shoot still photography, I could do a podcast, radio, whatever. I could do anything that you needed me to do, and I'd hustle and try to do it all. And that was kind of in vogue in 2010, 2011, 2012. Now it's a little bit more niche, and there's spots for different parts of that around the internet. And so it's maybe, I mean, there still is, I still do all of those from my job here, but I don't know if there's an emphasis on that as much. And so I give you a long answer to say I don't know. I know I want to stay in sports journalism. I know I'm probably, at least in this era of college football, I love covering it because you do get
Oh, I think I lost you. You froze up on me.
covering the Dallas Mavericks. Oh, all right. Am I still
I
there?
got you. I got you now.
Cool. I was saying, with covering college athletics at a state university, I get to file open records requests. I get to be involved with the way the state government works and the federal government works, in while still covering sports games and sports, and I love that. And so anything that kind of gets me to keep doing that, I've always wanted to be back in a big market, the top five market, something like that, but if you in a big five market, even covering a college sports, you don't necessarily get to cover. I walked uh 36 holes the past 2 days covering a golf tournament here in town. I love golf. You get to cover baseball every day, college baseball. I played college baseball. I love doing that. So there's something great about a small market that you get to do that. There's just so many pros and cons to it that I've learned that to be happy where my feet are, learn what the pros and cons, and find the pros of that job, lean hard into those, and when the next opportunity comes, I'll be moving to that and find the pros in that. But there's too much to like, there's too much to enjoy, and too much going on right now in sports journalism not to be able to find a niche in wherever you are and what you're doing, and try to uh, do the best journalism you can there in that role.
That's awesome. So I'm getting ready to graduate and looking for jobs and stuff. Do you have any advice for people that are trying to get into this field and into this career that are maybe graduating or trying to find jobs, stuff like that?
Sure. The biggest thing is networking. I haven't gotten a job. I've had 4.5 jobs in my career. And every single one of them I've gotten not because I saw it on a um, monster.com or journalismjobs.com listing. It's because I knew someone who knew that this position was going to be open, and they knew that I did good work, and they wanted to let that person know that I might be interested in the job. And that's how I ultimately got the job. And frankly, more times than not, when I know of jobs that got filled, it's because someone knew somebody and they wanted to recommend them. So it all falls back into networking. As many people as you can, even if they're not necessarily people who are in hiring positions. And it's not like, hey, know me, here I am. What can you do to help me get a job? It's more like get to know them, ask them questions. If they're older, lean on them for mentorship. And then show them that you're willing to learn, grow in your craft, and hustle. The other biggest thing is hustle. If you can be at anything, even if it's not something that was assigned to you, I not to try to toot my own horn, but just examples of how I try to do this in my own job is, the coaches have radio shows here every week at um, a barbecue place down the street. And as long as, I'm not tied into some other thing with work, or, my wife needs me something around the house, I'll go and listen. And so many great feature story ideas or lines of questioning that lead to stories have come from listening to some of these radio shows where the coaches get to talk about their players, and sometimes maybe be a little bit more at ease than when they're in front of the cameras and things like that, because they have to fill a whole hour of conversations with somebody, and going out there and doing that. Or if you hear of a coach or a player doing something in their spare time, going to check it out, being around, being visible to not only coaches, people that you're covering, but other people on the beat, other people you might encounter who might know that when a job comes open, they say, hey, this person goes over and beyond. They hustle. They are always trying to grow and better themselves in their career, and in their writing, videography, radio, whatever it is you want to do. They're always trying to get better. Those characteristics rub off and make you stand out amongst your peers, to those people. That person is going to want to go to bat for you. And whether it's you see that there's a job opening and you reach out to the person and say, hey, I might be interested in this job. Could you go to bat for me? Or someone who just knows of an opening that maybe even hasn't been posted yet, but knows that you would be great for that job, they're going to go to bat for you. And so I would say relationships, networking, hustle, those are the biggest things you can do. And it doesn't always have to do with the most breaking news you do, how great you are at Twitter, how many awards you've won. If they see that willingness to grow and get better, and they see that hustle, the writing, the awards, the everything, it's going to come. The reporting, the questioning, you'll grow into that. You'll get better at that. But hustle and a desire to get better, no one can question those qualities, and those are very hireable qualities.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Travis, for joining us this week on Behind the Mic in the SEC. Stay tuned because next week we'll be covering South Carolina. Thank you for joining us, Travis.
Hey, anytime. Glad to help.